She was a Jedi, a traitor, a teacher, and a mystery. She lived among the Yuuzhan Vong. She taught Jacen Solo. She whispered that the Force is one and that pain was a gift. And for some, she helped unravel everything that the Jedi stood for. This is the philosophy of Vergere, a rogue Force user whose radical ideas shook the Star Wars galaxy. Let's start at the beginning. What do we actually know of Vergere? She first appeared chronologically in Star Wars Rogue Planet, but her true role didn't unfold until the New Jedi Order series, decades later in the timeline. At that point, she's mystery wrapped in a myth. A Jedi who vanished over 50 years earlier, now resurfacing among the alien invaders known as the Yuuzhan Vong. But she didn't just survive their torturous society. She adapted to it, lived among them, became one of them, in a way. Yet, even while she served their war masters, she was playing a deeper game. When she meets Jacen Solo, the son of Han and Leia, she takes on her most important role, teacher, or perhaps, in a way, an unteacher. Because Vergere didn't offer answers, she dismantled them. She stripped Jacen of everything he thought he knew about the Force, and about the Jedi, about good and evil, and what she left behind was something completely new. Perhaps one of Vergere's most infamous quotes comes early in her time with Jacen. "Everything I tell you is a lie." It sounds like a paradox, but it's not a trick. It's a thesis statement. She doesn't lie in the traditional sense. Instead, she challenges the nature of truth itself, pushing Jacen to understand that truth is subjective, filtered through perception. Like Yoda's lesson on Dagobah, only what you take with you, Vergere goes further, suggesting that what we call truth may only be a projection of our internal state. Vergere's entire worldview is based on questioning dogma. She doesn't expect or want Jacen to take her words at face value. She wants him to question everything, Jedi teachings, Sith teachings, even the nature of truth itself, even the nature of the Force. In her view, truth is not a set of universal laws. It's personal, it's subjective, and it's filtered through perception. She pushed Jacen into a chaos, not to confuse him, but to liberate him, because only when he sheds every borrowed belief that he had could he begin to build his own understanding of the Force. And Vergere's most radical and controversial idea is this: there is no dark side. What does she mean by that? Not that evil doesn't exist, not that pain and suffering aren't real, but that the Force itself is not divided. Light and dark aren't external forces battling for dominance. They're labels, interpretations, and ultimately, choices. To Vergere, the Force is one. It is the user, not the Force, who brings morality to it. Anger, fear, aggression, these are all tools. Not inherently good or evil. It's the intention behind them, and the choice to use them or not that defines a person's path. This is a sharp break from the old and new Jedi Orders, which taught that certain emotions inherently led to the dark side. Vergere sees this as fear-based thinking, another cage. She doesn't teach Jacen to embrace the dark side. She teaches him to stop seeing it as a thing at all. Only the self remains. The Force is just the Force. And nowhere is Vergere's philosophy more extreme or more deeply personal than in her views on pain. During the novel Traitor, Jacen is imprisoned by the Yuuzhan Vong. He is tortured physically, psychologically, and spiritually. And Vergere doesn't stop it. In fact, she facilitates it. But not for cruelty, for instruction. Pain is a teacher. Pain is the only thing that tells you you're alive. Vergere forces Jacen to confront pain, not as something to flee, but as something to understand, to accept, and to own. She believes that only by enduring and understanding pain can one truly achieve mastery over the self. That transformation comes not through comfort, but through the crucible. It's a harsh lesson, but it mirrors real-world philosophies, from Stoicism to Zen to existentialism. Growth, in her view, only comes when we stop resisting suffering and start listening to it. This brings us to the core of Vergere's philosophy: freedom. Not freedom from pain, not freedom from fear, but freedom of choice. Vergere teaches Jacen that every being in the galaxy is free. Always. Even in captivity. Even in suffering. because freedom isn't about circumstance, it's about taking ownership of your decisions. She says, you are free. You are always free, and that is why you are responsible. To her, morality begins when you stop blaming the dark side, when you stop hiding behind Jedi codes, when you stop saying, the Force made me do it. True morality, for Vergere, is accountability. You don't do good because someone told you to. You choose it, and you own it, even when it hurts. But Vergere's beliefs weren't just philosophical, she acted on them as well. In the novel Destiny's Way, Vergere learned of a devastating weapon, Alpha Red, a biotoxin engineered to annihilate all Yuuzhan Vong-based life. Had the New Republic used this, it would have been a genocide. And Vergere made a choice. Quietly, without seeking recognition or reward, she sabotaged the weapon. She ensured that Alpha Red could never be deployed. Why? Because in her ambiguity, even in her rejection of Jedi orthodoxy, she still believed in the value of life, and she acted to protect life, and she did it alone. Not because it was her duty as a Jedi, but because it was her choice as a sentient being. It's one of the clearest, most unambiguous acts of good that Vergere does, and it shows that her rejection of binary morality doesn't mean apathy, it means agency. From Destiny's Way as well comes a conversation where Vergere comes face to face with Luke Skywalker, the man who rebuilt the Jedi Order from the ashes of the old. Their meeting is a quiet confrontation between two Jedi who have walked vastly different paths. Luke represents tradition reborn. More open than the old Jedi Council, yes, but still deeply rooted in the idea of the light side as a moral compass. Vergere, on the other hand, is a deconstructionist, and she rejects those moral binaries. Their dialogue is tense. Luke is cautious. He fears the consequences of unmooring the Jedi from the discipline of the light side versus the dark side, and Vergere accuses him of clinging to the old ways. They don't agree, but they do come to understand each other, in a way. Luke sees that Vergere is not a Sith, not driven by power or hate, but he also sees the seeds of what could be danger in her teachings. And so their interaction ends in uncertainty. Not enmity, but a unresolved tension. But the legacy of Vergere is perhaps most deeply seen in Jacen Solo, her student, and later, one might say her failure. After the war, Jacen embraces Vergere's ideas. He becomes a philosopher in his own right, a seeker of understanding. But later on, in the Legacy of the Force series, he takes a darker turn. Believing he alone can bring peace to the galaxy, he becomes Darth Caedus, a Sith Lord. Was this the inevitable outcome of Vergere's teachings, or a tragic misunderstanding on Jacen's part? Legacy of the Force hints, retroactively, that Vergere may have had Sith ties, and that she may have trained with Darth Sidious, and that her entire philosophy was a Trojan horse. But many fans and authors, including traders Matthew Stover, reject that idea. They argue that Vergere was not a Sith, but Jacen simply missed the point of her teachings. Where Vergere preached responsibility, Jacen claimed justification. Where she taught choice, he sought control. Her legacy was wisdom, but also a warning. Now, Vergere's philosophy didn't come out of nowhere. Her ideas mirror many real-world schools of thought, like Stoicism, Existentialism, and Zen Buddhism. Author Matthew Stover confirmed that Vergere's voice was shaped by these ideas. She's not a guru, she's not a Jedi, she's not a Sith, she's a philosopher, and she was seeking to create not followers, but thinkers. So who was Vergere? A Jedi? Yes. A traitor? Yes. A Sith in disguise? Maybe. Maybe the better question is, what did she show us? Vergere was a mirror. She held up the Force, the Jedi Order, and the Star Wars galaxy itself, and asked, who are you really? And who do you choose to become? Her teachings were liberating. They asked to abandon certainty and accept responsibility. They invited not to follow a path, but to forge one's own. And maybe that's what the Force had been asking the Jedi to do all along. I hope you've enjoyed this video and deep dive into the philosophy of Vergere. If you've enjoyed this video, and any of our other content, feel free to like this video, and also subscribe to the Lore Council so you can stay up to date with more of our future content.